All righty. Well, we got some folks jumping in. I know we're going to be waiting the next about 5 minutes or so for folks to join us. We'll start at 2:02 Eastern Time sharp. While we're waiting, what I typically like to do is, as you're jumping into the Zoom webinar for today, just to kind of give you the rundown of where to ask Q&A questions. So on the Zoom panel, there's a Q&A button, and I love starting off with just just some feedback from the folks who are joining us. So what we're doing is in the chat, wherever you're joining us from, please put in the city and state you're joining us from and your favorite television show. I'll just kind of start here from my side. It's difficult for me to just pick a favorite television show. I don't know about you, Penny, but I've got a top three. And so in my top three, Breaking Bad, I think, is the best show of all time. Such great character development. Second is Game of Thrones. I don't know. I know that's a little controversial because a lot of folks didn't like that last season, but the journey was so wonderful. And I think number three is The Crown for me. Ozark isn't on my list, Penny. I know you're a big fan, but over to you. What's kind of your favorite show, and maybe even your top three before we jump into the meat of today's content?
I said, if there is a way we can talk about Ozark in a practice management webinar, we're doing it. Ozark, currently obsessed. I see a hand raised. Thank you, Mike. All time, Game of Thrones has to be up there. So that's top three for me. I recently actually wrote this on Twitter. Game of Thrones, Sopranos. Come on.
Nice.
And, Ozark is top five, but I would say, Homeland, Sons of Anarchy. I watch.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So all of those, what do we got here? We see somebody wrote Jeopardy.
Nice.
Friends? Yeah, I mean, Billions. Now, Peaky Blinders couldn't get past episode 1.
I like Billions. Billions is a good show. It has the same character as Homeland, doesn't it? Or I think it does.
Which one?
The main I'm forgetting the actor's name. We'll just move on. But
yes, it's Damien something.
Yes,
right.
exactly. Yeah, great show. So Jeopardy. Okay. All right. Great show. Seinfeld, Firefly. Shout out from Dallas, Texas here. And for folks who are joining us, we're starting at 2:02 sharp. We're still waiting for just some folks here to join us. And the icebreaker question in the Q&A chat is going to be where you're joining us from, city and state, and your favorite television show of all time.
Yellowstone, Eddie and I agree on some things here. Yellowstone is good. It's not top 5 for me, but it's good.
Yeah, I've heard that's a great show. I haven't got into it, but I've heard from a handful of folks.
Yeah.
Ted Lasso. I've heard good things about that.
I got to start that one. New York, I don't know who's from East Coast, New York City. We're expecting a huge snowstorm. And I'm so mad that I watched all of Ozark last weekend. Because I could have watched it this weekend, but so I'm going to take some ideas from this list here to watch something this weekend.
So Penny, have you watched Billions?
Controversial. I could not get into Billions, and I'm going to try again because I know people freak out when I say that. I'm going to try it again this weekend. I couldn't get into Billions and I couldn't get into Succession. So I don't know.
Succession was hard for me to get into the first couple episodes, but once I got into it, it just drew me in. I just wanted to know what was going to happen. So I finished that a few weekends ago.
That's awesome. I see some familiar names. Hey, Dan Kakanis.
Shout out to Orlando, currently raining and cold, apparently over in Florida. You got a buddy who agrees with you with the Sopranos. Joel, shout out to Joel.
I didn't see Sopranos more in here. Ozark, yes. Is there a new season? David, yes, it's out. Half the season's out, David Zimbel. Gotta watch it.
Okay, great. Well, I see that it's 2:02 sharp Eastern time. So want to jump right into today's webinar. So everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We're so glad you've joined us. My name is Joman Bishop, Vice President of Sales here at Wealthbox CRM. And our time today is about practice management. And the first person that I think of whenever I think about the topic practice management is Penny Phillips, who is our special guest for today. Just a quick intro for Penny. And I know, Penny, you're going to introduce yourself in just a bit. But we're really excited about this conversation because Penny is the president and co-founder of Journey Strategic Wealth. She spent most of her career coaching and consulting financial advisors, business owners, and wealth management institutions. And in her role as the co-founder and president of Journey Strategic Wealth, an RIA built for advisors seeking independence and also offering full-fledged practice management support. She also has deep knowledge in this area of practice management. So, Penny, I love and appreciate all the content that you share. It actually helps me on the technology consulting side from the advisor perspective. So I do love your content. So I want to thank you for joining us today. And I know your time's valuable, so I appreciate you taking the time. I'd love to turn it over to you, Penny, just with an introduction with, who you are and what you're up to today with Journey Strategic Wealth.
Sure. Well, first of all, I sort of want to talk about TV shows for 45 minutes, but I will mentally get into practice management world. So yeah, I'm Penny Phillips. Some folks on the session might know who I am. I co-founded, and now run an RIA called Journey Strategic Wealth. I've spent my whole career in practice management, coaching, and consulting to some extent. Before Journey, I ran a consulting company called Thrivos Consulting. And so I've spent my whole career coaching individual advisors and their teams and working with advisory institutions across the industry to, help them retain advisors and be more forward thinking as it relates to serving the end client and consumer. I'll say really briefly about Journey. Journey Strategic Wealth, our firm, is to me the culmination of all of my experience and my partner's experience as advisors and consultants as well in this space. And what we've built is a firm that's really designed for advisors who want independence, but at the same time, they want support and flexibility. And those things tend to contradict each other. And I'll tell you, Jim, and I know we've spoken about this, what I found towards the end of my time consulting was that we were working with a lot of breakaway teams who were leaving a wirehouse or a captive environment in the insurance space. They would go independent. They would chase payout, first of all. They'd go independent. And then they'd realize independence feels and means something very different than what they thought it did. And so I really made note of that, and then in 2020 started to plan for, how do we build a firm that solves for the gaps that still exist for advisors when they do go independent and then have to run their own firm, or become part of an organization that is making decisions for them. So and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the structure, but that's how I got from consulting to now, building and operating this company.
Great. Well, thanks for that quick intro. What I'd be curious about, I know that you mentioned a little bit about, how you got to that journey. And then some of your colleagues I've worked with before, I know that you have a couple other co-founders as well at Journey Strategic Wealth. I'd be curious to know, how you all got together and maybe a little bit more about the founding story of JSW.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 4 co-founders. We all go way back with one another. I luckily launched this business. 2 of my partners were my personal advisors and folks that I'd known for many, many years back when I was consulting at Envestnet, a firm we all probably know and love. And our 4th partner was another consultant in the industry who I was very good friends with. And and by the way, if you're going to go into business, I recommend you go into it with people you very much know and trust, because it's a grueling process to launch a business during a global pandemic, by the way. But, we had always been talking about, and my partners are advisors who came from the wire space, went independent. We had always been talking about what the industry has missed. And I'll talk a lot about this today. We are obsessed, especially in the RIA space, with transacting, with M&A, with, AUM. And I think we, to some extent, missed the point about, first of all, what clients are actually looking for in an experience with their advisor. And secondly, what the advisor actually wants to build as the business owner. And so we started to have conversations about, what if we sort of meld together an RIA that has all of the services and technology and systems and support that every other RIA does. But what if we marry that really with the practice management, ongoing coaching engagement and experience for the advisor? And so, so that was sort of our brainchild originally, and we were able to do that. And within 3 months, we brought on a team, a wonderful team in San Francisco out of Northwestern Mutual, and have continued to build from there. And so, our mission ultimately is advisors should not have to give up anything when they go independent. Meaning, if they want to maintain 100% ownership in their book of business, they should be able to. They shouldn't have restrictive covenants around their contracts with a firm, but they also should be able to tap into practice management resources, not just on a ad hoc basis, but on an ongoing basis. Meaning, they should have a team that helps them make strategic decisions about the business every day, all day, because advisors should spend 85% or more of their time working with clients or rainmaking, and that is our ultimate mission.
Got it. Got it. And so one of the things that I'd be curious about is, with the folks that have joined the JSW team, you mentioned that focus on, those relationships, building those client relationships, rainmaking, if you will. And so the aspect that JSW covers, operations or billing or human resources, can you talk a little bit about what the offering is in its entirety? Because I think a lot of times that I do hear advisors, they're overwhelmed by managing all the different sides of the business that's separate from financial advice. So can you talk a little bit more about that? What Journey provides, in specificity, whether it's that financial planning support, technology stack, home office support. Can you talk a little bit more about that aspect?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll never say no to talking about my business's offering to advisors.
Sure.
The context around this, and this is important and will resonate, I think, with folks. We, the founders, we were sort of tired of going to firm websites or reading these press releases, and firms, RIAs are talking about best in breed. We have best in breed technology. That's our unique differentiator. Or we whatever it is, like that. These things are table stakes in the business right now. Access to best in breed technology, access to a robust investment management platform, ability to charge fees how you want. These are table stakes. If you're an independent advisor, you should have complete access to all of that. For us, we started to think about what is the true differentiator for a firm. In our mind, it is actually not just offering all of the things that an advisor should have access to, but it's actually helping the advisor implement on an ongoing basis. So here's what I mean. When an advisor joins us, operations are completely outsourced to the home office, meaning billing, HR, trading, everything. But we take it a step further. So we take over the P&L entirely for the firms that join us. We pay their team members compensation. We help them negotiate contracts with vendors. In our minds, advisors should be advising, and I'll talk about this later. It's literally, advisors have one of the most important jobs that exist. People need advisors more than ever. What advisors shouldn't be spending their time doing is reading white papers and trying to figure out how to bonus a lead advisor on their team. That's where we come in and help the advisors on an ongoing basis, while still allowing the advisor to maintain 100% equity ownership in their firm. And we have capital and can buy a part of their firm or all of their firm at any time. So there is built-in continuity and succession. So it's almost the best of all worlds for the advisor.
Got it. Got it. And in one of the other areas, and brings us to today's topic of practice management, it seems like that you provide to, folks who come onto the JSW team is practice management. So I want to just talk about that overall. I know it's a very broad area of practice management. It could be CRM practice management. It could be, just managing your practice overall. It could just be a lot specific to technology or tools or process. In the coaching that JSW provides from a practice management perspective, what falls into that practice management umbrella? Can you talk a little bit about that?
And I'll bring it to CRM because I see some people writing a couple comments. So I want to make note of that. It's everything from when we think about practice management, it's decisions that advisors have to make to optimize their practices and make them more efficient. So a great example is we may talk in a little bit about workflows within Wealthbox or a CRM. For us, practice management, coaching, and implementation means actually creating those workflows for the advisor and implementing them into their CRM before they even start with us. So it's really trying to stay a couple steps ahead about the advisor's needs and the practice's needs. And so it's everything from strategic planning around practice management to actual to tactical implementation of it.
Got it. Got it. And on the practice management calls, and we'll get into CRM practice management here in just a minute. But what are one of the most significant things that you've learned just from a practice management perspective while training advisors?
Um, well, first that not everybody's coachable. So coaching advisors, you definitely learn that. The people who are
Sure.
coachable are probably on this call. A couple things. I alluded to it at the very beginning. The first is that as an industry, have defined success for advisors. Many advisors started in the business, hunting and rainmaking within a captive firm. And we have trained them to think very tactically sometimes about the business, right? I need to hit, this much AUM or bring in this many households and 1 billion equals, and the reality is that when you run a business and you have built a practice, you should have the ability to grow that business how you want it and define success for yourself and your team. So that's the one thing. The other thing, which I talk a lot about, is we have unrealistic expectations of advisors. Most people didn't get in this business to manage team members, to think about how to maximize margins within a P&L. And so suddenly we expect advisors to be able to do that. Even something as simple as integrating a new CRM into a tech stack, advisors shouldn't be responsible for having to figure out how to optimally do that. And that is really sort of the foundation of what we've built at Journey. And it's certainly what I learned coaching advisors.
That's helpful. Yeah, and just to address, just the overall here aspect of, practice management when it comes to CRM, I want to talk about that just on the Wealthbox side here real briefly. And Penny, feel free to jump in here, if you'd like to as well. So a couple of things for folks who are joining us, specifically about, the purpose of how you use CRM. A lot of times when advisors are switching from a previous system, they often tell me on the phone that they're using their previous system as a glorified Rolodex. And the way that Wealthbox is positioned to serve within the tech stack is a couple of different functions. The first one being the central place of record. The second function is being the central place of task and process management. Tools that we have for that are tasks and workflows, which Penny, you mentioned, and I believe the JSW team takes advantage of with Wealthbox. And the third is just being the hub of the technology that's used here, specifically for tasks and workflows. I know that for some teams that are out there who are wanting to not just have their CRM system as just a set of contacts, they want to add that task and workflow aspect of adding workflows. And so I want to just ask you, Penny, maybe perhaps if some of the advisors that you coach ask specifically about help with tasks and workflows, and then we can talk a little bit about maybe perhaps how that applies within Wealthbox as well.
Yes. And can you repeat the question? Because I was just answering stuff in the chat.
Yeah, sure. Specifically on how you coach maybe perhaps advisors who ask for help with, workflows and business processes within the firm.
Yeah, and this is a really important question. And I want to preface it by saying anybody who talks to me for more than 30 seconds knows that I immediately start talking about what doesn't work with technology in our industry. And I'm not going to do that on this session, respectfully, gentlemen. But I'm going to share this, keeping in mind that some of the pushback that we would get when we were coaching advisors or helping them build tech stack was, look, the technology doesn't fully integrate anyway, and single sign-on isn't integration. And I will say I agree with all of that. And my advice to advisors, first and foremost, if you are frustrated, is we need to focus as practitioners and business owners on what we can and can't control, right? And so unless we're going to go consult in the fintech space and try to change things, we need to leverage what is considered best in breed right now in the business within each tech stack. Some of the complaints I get when I was coaching teams was, and it would always come from the senior advisor or leader of the organization, is the technology doesn't really work. And I always ask folks to reflect on that question. 50% of the time, the person wasn't actually using the technology, right? We get used to being frustrated and complaining about things, but I think it's important for a team to reflect on a couple things. Number one, do we understand the full service offering of this tech piece? Have we gone through trainings and demos? I mean, a lot of times, it's because a lot of firms like yours are trying to scale. You guys have great service, by the way, but it's watch this demo, and that's when the person who's the user is like, well, I'm kind of turned off. I want to speak to a regular person. I encourage advisors to make training around CRM a team event and literally put it on their calendar for whatever quarterly or semi-annual team offsites they're doing. So that's number one, really engage in learning the technology and using it effectively. The second thing I'll say is be realistic about what a CRM is supposed to do, and specifically what let's say a Wealthbox is supposed to do. You alluded to this just a second ago. A major complaint I've heard from advisors in the past and teams is that, look, we love the CRM system, but if our custodian or our portfolio management software isn't flowing data back to the CRM, what's the point? I can't get a full picture of my client's situation. Look, CRM systems are not designed to, we're not originally designed to house data around, policies or, account balances, et cetera. And so having the right expectations around the fact that the CRM system is supposed to capture the initial information that you input about the prospect and then ultimately the client. And it's supposed to keep a record of all of the activities and tasks and workflows that are associated with that client or household. So number one, if you are continuing to be frustrated about the fact that the CRM isn't talking to other systems, my recommendation is every time you have a review meeting with that client, take whatever data or information that is in, let's say, if it's Orion or Fidelity's Wealthscape or eMoney, whatever information has not flowed or is missing from the CRM, manually put it in the notes section. The other thing I'll say about CRM is there is a big difference between assigning tasks, and you and I talk about this, Joman, and leveraging workflows. A lot of times I hear people say, we're using this great new CRM, Redtail, Wealthbox, whatever it is, but we're still doing so much manual work. If you are still doing a lot of manual work, assigning a task to a team member is no different than sending an email to them. So yeah, of course, you're not going to feel, like you have more capacity. You have to really engage in identifying the workflows, the repeatable systems, processes, and actions that take place across the client engagement spectrum, and kicking off those workflows. So once you kick off a workflow, obviously it automatically assigns a series of tasks. Some people are asking if I'd be open to sharing ours. Absolutely. Wealthbox also has examples of key workflows like onboarding a new client, prepping for a review meeting, et cetera. But yes, I'm happy to help and do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and just to expand on that point, there's a couple of things I want to touch on. So for anyone who is listening and you're looking to get started on a few templates, and more on this soon, we'll be sharing a little bit more about this on a separate webinar. But this is going to be specifically about a workflow library that's going to be provided for Wealthbox customers. And so for things just like that, new client onboarding, moving money, trade orders, things like that, we'll have a general template that you'll have access to within the app that you can then hit duplicate and make it your own. And so I think that's definitely a critical step, and definitely thank you, Penny, for the suggestion of some of the templates that you may suggest out there into the market from a practice management perspective. One of the other points that you'd mentioned, Penny, that I want to touch on is, for the folks who, may not be using it and getting the training. For the Wealthbox customers on today's call, every single day at 1 p.m. Eastern, we do have a full overview of Wealthbox. And so you can feel free to join that anytime. So I would say to advisors, if you do, to Penny's point of just getting the training, knowing the function and just seeing that overview of those features, making sure you jump on our daily webinar just to see what's offered there when it comes to those core CRM actions. One other thing that I'll quickly mention here before we move on to the next topic of service and client segmentation within CRM is just making sure that you have calls with our support team to make sure that you are connecting all of the integrations. If you do need help with that within the app, just hitting the three dots in the top right hand side, going to applications, putting your login, and we'd be happy to share a little bit more on the Wealthbox side there when it comes to integrations. So I want to move on to this next topic area when it comes to best practices that that advisors often ask me about. Pretty often they say, Gentlemen, like how should we segment our book of business? And there's a couple of different ways that I've seen advisors structure and segment their contacts and books of business, whether it's with tags or specific custom fields or contact types. But I'd be curious, Penny, a little bit more about, and this is again based off of one of your practice management with Penny videos that I watched on YouTube, where you talk a little bit more about this topic. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the best strategy is for client segmentation within CRM?
Yeah, and I talk a lot about segmentation, and I think we need to move away from this thinking that the ABCD segmentation structure is the only way to, segment a book of business. And I say that, and this is important because the reality is, if you're segmented, you use the traditional four segmentation structure, you're mostly giving the same level of service to the, we'll call it bottom three tiers, right? Like usually we do a lot of extra stuff for our top clients, and then it gets kind of murky down the line. So we're not big, I don't want to say proponents, but we use more of a three-tier sort of structure, if you will. The segments are mostly designed to help us understand the client's total asset level and revenue impact to the firm. What we actually use more than that is the tagging. And this is something I talk a lot about. The psychographic profiles of the consumers are the things that we should be thinking about as advisors trying to grow a business. The demographic data and information is helpful so that we broadly understand, okay, these clients have, 10 million or more with us. These clients are financial planning clients. What's more important as it relates to growing and building more relationships is being able to group clients together based on certain things we know about their psychographic profiles. So we could use simple examples like likes to golf, for example. I hate that example, but we could use that as an example. I've coached advisors and some who really embrace this topic. They get as specific as, pessimist clients, optimist clients. I mean, think about why that's so critical. If you're able to know the way in which your client thinks and perceives information, using a DISC assessment, by the way, I don't know if anybody is a DISC user, show of hands, maybe. Actually giving top clients a DISC assessment, figuring out what their communication style is, and then tagging that within your CRM system. It's very easy to tag, by the way, within Wealthbox. Think about how critically important that is for things like marketing or the way in which you present information to clients. Some people might be, visual learners versus, need to see everything written out. If you have all of that information tagged within the database, not only are you able to curate your marketing activity, but you're also able to curate individual engagement. So client comes in for a review meeting or you're Zooming with a client, you quickly check their contact sheet within the CRM and you're seeing all these things, you're remembering all these things about the client. Traditionally this client speaks more than the female spouse. you're cueing yourself now to engage the female spouse more, or you're cueing yourself to bring something up in that meeting that you otherwise wouldn't have. So for me, segmentation is about much more than just, A, B, C, D. It is about creating these almost micro communities within your book of business.
Got it. Got it. One of the things that was interesting that you had mentioned that I maybe want to go a little bit deeper on, you mentioned the DISC assessment to behaviorally understand the profile of that client. Can you expand a little bit more about that for maybe advisors who are not familiar with that at all, and maybe perhaps how it's been helpful to your process?
This is, some some folks use DISC. There's Colby assessments. I think any assessment in which we can, and this is relevant, by the way, for clients and team members as well, join. And if you want to give a spouse the personality assessment, not, that I wouldn't recommend. But any environment in which you're having to work and engage with people and service them, if you will, really important to know a couple things. Number one, how do they thrive? In what environment do they best thrive? Number two, what's their listening and communication style? I have a very direct communication style. If I am working with a client or a team member who I know is a, DISC, DISC, is a, high S or a high C, my direct communication style might turn them off. They might say, wow, this person is,
Sure.
isn't communicating in a way that resonates with me. So we don't often think about how powerful these tools are with clients. And if you're really differentiating the service experience for top clients, saying to them, look, our value proposition is that we really are going to create a unique experience for you. How do you prove that value proposition to be true? Give them a communication assessment and say it's important for us to know the best way in which you read and perceive information in our communication. And so we're going to ask you to take this 15-minute, quiz or whatever. And so it's scale and customization, the idea that we need to give our service to a lot of people because they need it, but need to make everybody feel like it's created just for them. These are small ways in which we can do that.
Absolutely. And just for the Wealthbox customers that have joined, I just want to expand just practically within the CRM tool, a couple of areas where maybe perhaps we can highlight some of the things that just Penny had mentioned. So the first thing, we'll talk about tags and segmentations and all of that there in just a few minutes. But, specific to, let's just say there is a communication preference, as Penny had just mentioned. So one of the things that I want to point out is, of course, you do have the ability to pin an activity. And so this one here, I'll go ahead and I'll pin this right here at the top. And so if you come to the contact record or the household record within Wealthbox and you see communication preferences or a specific profile of the client of how they would like to be serviced from a touch level standpoint, you can see that top of mind. And that way, anyone who comes on this record, whether it's the client service team, whether it's another junior advisor, whether it's the ops team, they'll see that note pinned there right there at the top. Another area in Wealthbox where you can do this is this background information field. What you'll notice here is that there is inline editing. And so you can hit that inline editing box and you can put any kind of specific details here or even add a custom field that responds specifically to this profile. Now, to high level, just the topic that we were just discussing of client segmentation, I'll quickly go into the all contacts view here just real quickly. And, I know Penny, you don't like the example of golf, but we have that here in this system. So a couple of things that I'll just kind of point out. Whatever system that you have when it comes to that client segmentation, what I generally see is the tag that's associated by the touch level requirement in Wealthbox. And so if you have, let's just say, and I'll just use this as an example, your A-list client requires a quarterly meeting, you can then quickly get a subset of your A-list client really quickly. And you'll know this is my list that needs a quarterly meeting to make sure that I have a great client experience. The last thing that I'll touch on before we kind of move on to this topic is for folks who, may want to see, all right, which one of my clients has not received a touch this quarter. There's reports that you can run within Wealthbox that you can run that report of last activity in the last 90 days, 180 days, to make sure that the contacts and clients of yours that you haven't been having a scheduled meeting or any kind of touch level, that you can continue to reach out to them to get that meeting scheduled. All right,
There,
so
there's some really good questions in the chat. So if you don't mind, I'll blanket sort of answer some of them. One is about sort of taking this further around leveraging the CRM and what are some starter tags. I'll just share, we like to tag our clients based on things that we know will inform the way we market to people like them. So female millennial entrepreneurs, that might be a tag. That's an important tag because when we're thinking about, let's say, client events, or we're thinking about bringing a speaker on a virtual webinar, there are certain speakers that would be aligned to that type of client. Clients who have children who are engaged in the family business, so that we might call that multi-gen business owners. So things that help us think about, if we want to find more clients like this, what do we need? What's a really easy way to summarize what we know about them? By the way, my contact information, I'm sort of everywhere, so anybody can feel free to email and I'll give you the ones that we use. The other thing I'll say about streamlining operations and using the CRM to do that, first of all, the technology is only as good as the data that you provide. So somebody on your team, and it shouldn't be the advisor, needs to own ensuring that client information and data is complete and thorough and accurate. That's number one. The second thing I'll say, and this is a really good exercise, I recommend folks do it at the end of the year, but you could do it really at any time. I recommend actually whiteboarding in a meeting with your team or a coach or whomever. Imagine the client engagement spectrum from lead generation and conversion, right? That's like really the start, to client onboarding, to review meeting, to, ongoing. And at every point along that spectrum, it's really important for the team to literally write it out, even if it's in a Word document, the steps that you take that are repeatable, so, or that you want to be repeatable. So for example, onboarding a client, there are things that need to happen. There are emails that need to go out, which, by the way, within the workflow, somebody asked this, you can attach a template copy of an email or a letter or a note that you send out. So in your onboarding workflow, right, you've just mapped this out with your team. You know that, a week before they are officially a client, you're sending out a welcome kit. What we actually do within our workflow is we assign a task to the person on our team responsible for surprising and delighting clients. And they actually work with an outside vendor to send our welcome gift. So that whole process of curating the welcome gift and sending it out happens automatically with the click of a button. There's a welcome letter that you'll likely want to send to every new client that comes on board. That letter should be pre-written and should be within the task so that the person just knows to copy paste, send it out. A week after the client becomes a client, there's an update email that goes out to them about, where their ACATs are in the process, et cetera, et cetera. So actually taking the time to map out all of the steps and then putting it into the CRM will help you optimize across the entire spectrum.
Okay, great. And then just to transition here, just to questions, because there's a lot of questions here that are coming in. So a couple here that I'll answer. So there's a question here about the workflow template library. I can help you with that. So feel free to email me at sales@wealthbox.com. We can get that loaded in your Wealthbox workspace. So keep us posted on that and just email us, sales@wealthbox. We'll get that set up for you. Next question here is, will this session be available for replay? This is recorded. We'll be posting on our website, so we'll be able to share that with you.
Pellegrino is asking a very good question about household revenue and importing that. And I know we've talked about that, and I alluded to that, Scott, at the very beginning about, you know, single sign-on versus integration. I'll let you maybe take that. Um, the idea is, and I think Scott, if I'm hearing you right, it's you got all this great information about a client in Wealthbox, but you want to real time be able to see what their revenue is. And the only way to do that right now is then to sign into another system. So maybe you can talk about optimizing that, Joman.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott, I think one of the things we could do here, I'd love to jump on a call with you just to understand your tech stack, but I'll just kind of use Orion for example. So if you are a customer of Orion and you're looking to see total household value in terms of assets, you hit the contact record. If you have, Orion, for example, enabled, you can hit the Orion tab and you can see the total value of all of the custodied assets with Orion. And if you do need that information specifically in terms of the billing schedule, those details, what we provide is a contextual link right over into Orion. And Penny, you and I talked about this, before, is where we serve our customers when it comes to CRM is being your central place of record, the functions of note-taking, tasks, workflows, the fields on the contact record, the aspects of building that relationship and, bringing new business in and tracking opportunities. Those are the areas that we really help and serve our customers. But where a portfolio reporting tool where you track your billing, that tool specifically is specialized in that, and focus breeds excellence. And so our philosophy when it comes to our integrations with financial planning, portfolio reporting, is that we provide the contextual information within Wealthbox and then surface easy contextual access into that system. So Scott, just kind of my note to you, just feel free to email us, support@wealthbox.com. We'll be happy to meet with you specific to your tech stack. And then to your other second point, Scott, about facilitating and scheduling client meetings. So a couple of things here and tools from a CRM perspective that may help you. Two things here that I'll suggest and recommend. The first thing is email templates. A lot of Wealthbox customers, when they're scheduling a meeting with a client, whether they're using Calendly or any kind of other scheduling tool, they'll use the email template that's part of Wealthbox Mail. It's available on Pro and Premier plans. They'll send that over to their client, or the client will schedule a meeting, and that will show up in their Wealthbox calendar. And the way that it shows up in your Wealthbox calendar, typically tools like Calendly, Schedule Once, any one of those scheduling tools, they sync directly with your Outlook calendar or your Google Calendar if that's within your tech stack. So as long as you connect that integration with Wealthbox, your scheduling tool will sync with the Wealthbox calendar. So two things just to recap, I would suggest using an email template for that. And the second thing is making sure that either your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar, whichever one you used, is synced with your CRM.
And I'll add to that. This is another common one where an advisor, and it's happened to us too, candidly, building our tech stack and trying to get used to how to leverage it effectively. Making sure that we use Outlook, and we're a Microsoft Office firm, but making sure that's fully integrated within Wealthbox. Literally, you can and by the way, you can also connect it to your phone number. So every call that you make, assuming that you're doing it within Wealthbox, every email is logged within the client contact. And so a lot of times I'll hear advisors say, well, or a team will say, well, it's tough to know everything that's going on. And in almost every case, they haven't properly integrated or synced their email to Wealthbox. It's very effective. The other thing I'll say, and just for those who are wondering, our tech stack is Wealthbox, eMoney, Orion, Riskalyze, Asset Map, and we're open to using anything in it, any piece that an advisor needs. That's my philosophy on it. I don't think we should dictate tech stack forever. The industry is changing rapidly and advisor needs are different. However, that is our core tech stack. What I will say is that we struggled, and someone alluded to this in the questions, with this idea of all this great information is housed in Orion, yet our clients go into eMoney and we're using Wealthbox. And what I say to advisors is you really should have two things up on your screen all day, every day at any given time. Well, really three, right? Your email inbox, your Wealthbox, because very important that you're using that on an ongoing basis. And third, your portfolio management system. So like trends within Orion, it takes 2 seconds to be able to see what your current revenue is for a client or what your flows in were that day. And your Wealthbox and Orion side by side, there you go, you have a full picture. Is it optimal? No, but is it the best that we have? Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, using the CRM to capture information at the point that you're doing a review meeting with a client, date, here's where they're at, AUM wise, et cetera, et cetera. That's a way to keep sort of this running log of what's present and live in Orion and what's happening within Wealthbox.
That's helpful. I'm going to transition here to a question from Michael that is asking, is the client journey of repeatable tasks and templates, can that be implemented or codified in Wealthbox? And the answer to that is absolutely. That's what a workflow tool is designed to do within Wealthbox. So to kind of talk a little bit about high level between tasks and workflows, your tasks are your one-off to-do items. And it's a great way to assign a team member if they just need to schedule a meeting. However, if when you're scheduling a meeting, you have with a prospect, you have a specific process of who you're scheduling that, when you're scheduling it, the tools that you're using. And if that gets really granular, our suggestion is to use a workflow. A workflow is for any business process that you have within the firm. And so if client journey is one of the business processes that you have in the firm, creating a workflow template that's representative of your client journey. Let's say in the first 30 days or 60 days or 90 days of that client journey, you have specific touch points that you do as a firm for onboarding that client. That absolutely can be codified into Wealthbox. It's through Wealthbox workflows, and we'd be more than happy to help you with that just to get your process into Wealthbox workflows.
Yeah, and there's a question here about CRM usage for if you're solo practitioner. My answer to that is always going to be the direct and honest answer, which is advisors should not be doing the heavy lifting within this. That even if you have to hire a virtual admin, there's many great firms that offer this service, very cost effective, to be able to do the heavy lifting of actually inputting the data in. Remember, again, the systems only work if the data is clean and correct and thorough. And so my recommendation is, in fact, most important hire you can make is that initial hire to take administrative tasks off of you as the advisor. But please explain why you prefer to use a tag versus a customized client type within the contact setup. I don't, David, I don't have an honest answer for that, except tagging is, we find it easier to use and edit. We can remove tags, we can add them. It's just been easier for us to use that way. Joman, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things that I'll walk through on this type. So contact type, for when we're onboarding new firms, usually for that contact type field, that's going to be the designation that you'd want to make if a contact is a lead, a prospect, a center of influence, a vendor, and that way, or an active client or a past client. Those are the general contact types from a CRM perspective that we recommend for contact types. And then for tags, oftentimes within your active client segment, just as Penny mentioned a little earlier of, hey, based off of whether it's the touch level requirement or the types of assessments that are done, they're grouped within your active client segment of specific segments that they have, maybe by interest or by their touch level requirement to make sure that they are a happy client. So those are the distinctions that I would make between the contact type field and also the tags here. And we can walk through that as well. So I know that we're at time here, 45 minutes. So I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank you, Penny, for joining us. And I know your time is valuable. I know you're a resource out there in the practice management space. And I know this topic is so broad, and we weren't able to cover all the things that folks wanted to cover in today's meeting. But we're going to continue this series just to talk a little bit more about specific topics. And as I kind of alluded to a little earlier, what we have upcoming is a specific webinar that's going to be talking a little bit more about the Wealthbox Workflows library. So we're really excited about that. That's going to be upcoming, and we'll share that with our Wealthbox customers, of course, via email. This webinar will be recorded. We'll be sending that out via email as well for all the folks who attended. Penny, where can folks find you if they're interested in learning a little bit more about you, learning a little bit more about some of the practice management videos that you share out there on the internet? Where can folks find you, and any last final parting words here?
First of all, I'm very easy to find. So you can find me pretty much anywhere. LinkedIn, Penny Phillips. I'm on Twitter all the time. And I have a YouTube series, Practice Management with Penny and Team. Feel free to DM me or email me. The last thing I'll say, folks, is that, I say this to advisors all the time, like, go easy on yourselves if you're feeling frustrated about technology or, where you're at right now in the business. It's perfectly okay to reach out to folks like me and ask for help. And I hope that some of you will take me up on that. Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Thank you for joining us, Penny. For last thing, real quick before I wrap here, for anyone who's just jumped on this webinar, has never heard of Wealthbox, just a quick 30-second highlight here. Wealthbox is a modern, easy-to-use CRM for financial advisors. We do complimentary migrations from any CRM to help you get started. And if you'd like to get more information, you can head over to wealthbox.com, click on Book a Demo to learn more, and you'll get plugged in with one of our product specialists. And our mission here at Wealthbox is to help financial advisors to streamline their CRM business operations with a modern and easy-to-use CRM. And all of our customers who have joined us today on this call make that possible. So thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Thank you again, Penny Phillips, for talking a little bit about practice management today. It's been such a delight and a privilege here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.